Welcome back. After 2 failed attempts, I finally have installed the uppermost topside batten. In the end, it's not perfect, and I had a lot of challenges. Here you see it failed not once, but twice, before I came up with a viable solution. I now understand that this swirly, short grain of the African mahogany does not bend well, and that's what caused the cracks. But I was able to fix this by using two 5/16" layers. I start in the digital model, measuring the vertical distance from the shear clamp to the bottom of the topside batten. After doing this at the stem, the 13 frames, and the transom, I know how high up each frame to cut the notches. So from the model I just showed you, I'm going to use the measurements that are perpendicular to the shear clamp, and on frame 4 it says 2 and 11/16. On this side. So that goes from the bottom of the shear clamp to the bottom of this first one. So then when I go to frame 3, it's supposed to be 2.5 inches. I think you get the idea. After marking the notches, I wanted to create a jig to cut them on the frames. So the way I want this jig to work is I'm going to put it up against the frames, and then I'll have this plunge saw set so I can go ahead and cut out my notches. And now I've got to cut it through. Okay, so I mounted this jig, and what I ultimately need to do is each of the boards, each of the topside battens is 5/8 of an inch thick. So to have a 1/4 inch overhang, I need it to be go in 3/8 of an inch, and this is half of a 1/2 inch thick plywood. So that is 4/8 plus 3/8 is 7/8 deep. So I've set my plunge saw to 7/8 inches deep, and I'm just going to plunge it down, and here we go. Yep, that's about right. So then I want to do it on this lower one as well. And once I've got those, then it's a whole lot easier to come in and cut the rest of the notch. Just say, hey, these need to be 3/8 of an inch deep. With the saw cut to the proper depth, it was very simple to chisel out the notches. But the circular saw method was my favorite for cleaning up the notches. Along with the Shinto rasp for the final touches. after cutting out the notches, I want you to see that I've started dry fitting the battens. And there's a pretty useful way to look at this is as the boat is curving in towards the back, what you'll see is I have a gap at the front of the notch. I've cut these notches perpendicular to the frame. They're seated at the back, but there is a gap at the front, and that's because it's angling in towards the back. So by seeing this batten in place, I get an idea of how much now from the front, that gap there, I got to remove that much more material from the backside so that it will sit flush to the shear clamp of the boat. Back here at the transom, I haven't quite figured out if I cut that too deep or if I did it right. I'm gonna have to take a look at the angle at which I did this. I think I need to cut the back side of the transom a little further in. But it gives you an idea of how I'm gonna start dry fitting this in here. And there's the clamping idea I got from Dan and Andrew. It works really well. On these curved frames, especially if there's a bulkhead, there's not really a great way to hold a clamp on there. So by putting this 1/2-inch board and just putting 2 temporary screws, I get a nice clamp. So I'll be using that methodology throughout. I'll demo this on frame 12. I have a gap here of 1/4 inch on the front side. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come around this back side and I'm just gonna put an arrow in, and you'll see it later, of 1/4 inch. So it tells me I need to angle this 1/4 inch. Frame 13, I already know it's 3/8 inch of a gap. So I'm gonna mark all these gaps that I have in the front, and then I'm gonna cut a little bit deeper on the back side so I can get this topside batten to the shape of the boat. Here on frame 11, you can see we have to take 1/4 inch off the back side. And I'm just gonna try to do this with this, I think it's called a Shinto rasp. And the key is not to touch this front edge up here, just to be taking it off to the back side and do a nice clean plane. Interesting to see here, starting at frame 6, I put a clamp. I put a little bit of a wooden clamp here on frame 5 because I'm trying to get this to bend around, but it has so much twist and bend in here that even back here at frame 5, I've already split the timber. Now, luckily this is one I'm not planning to put in the boat because I've already scarfed and split the ones in the front, but this makes a lot of sense what Andrew and Dan were showing a few weeks ago, that you have to split these right down the middle to get them to make the bend and the twist at the front of this boat. But this will be okay for now because all I'm trying to do is get the in and out adjustment on the notches from the front to the back. So here you see on frame 5, I've got the front fitted pretty well, and I got a little bit of a gap in the back, so it tells me, what is that, 1/8 of an inch? Probably got to take 1/8 of an inch off the front of this frame notch. To make the topside batten that will actually go in the boat, I scarfed together 3 10-foot long boards. To make an 8-to-1 scarf, I cut this at a 7-degree angle. I'm gonna take apart this jig I made to route out the limber holes, and I'm gonna use it as a jig to clamp the scarf joints on the top side rails. I'm just going to use this to line up the scarf joints so when I put them together they stay nice and straight. And I need to split the frontmost batten all the way between frames 3 and 4. 7 feet. Since my friend needed his bandsaw back, I split these by hand. I bond the scarves together with a combination of unthickened and then thickened epoxy. Okay, so now I have this split 7 feet in, and I tried to put it between frames, I think 3 and 4. So is it perfect? Close enough. So it's not terrible here if I got it all the way in. The issue is I've got more to take out on the front. So it looks like I got about a 1/16 inch on the back and of gap. So it means I gotta take about a 1/16 inch off the front. Now to think through how I'm gonna do this. Of course, I chose a very delicate hand tool. On these forward frames, you need to remove some of the front material so the wooden clamp can work. I'm just angling this what I think is about parallel to the shear clamp. So this is close. I gotta take a little bit off more here in the front. What I'm gonna do before I do that is I'm gonna work my way up to this frame 1 and start putting that in. Just because I know the position of this board here, the curvature here affects this. So I'm gonna ease it all together. Okay, so I've used these, how do you call it, these straps to slowly bring this in. I started getting some cracking over here, so I've clamped these boards together to make sure they don't crack, because I am going to use them. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a board here to start clamping things together. This is not in far enough, but you can see I just have to keep twisting and bending these boards in. This is so hard to get done. Okay. So even more has to come off this front edge to get this in. Oh my God. No, why did that not go in? So I'm going to have to work on this. I've got these things breaking left and right, which I'm not quite sure what to do about.
Despite my struggles, I pushed forward and notched the stem.
Okay, borrowing again from one of Dan Lee's videos where he had Andrew on there. This board is as wide as the topside battens are thick. So when I put this in here, if I put that in, cut that, that should fit right in. So that is what I'm gonna do. Okay, I'm at the risk of like breaking all these boards here pretty quick. Okay, so I've got the front in. I can't even tell you if it's perfect, and I'm not sure I care anymore. This thing's way too far in. Look at that, it's just going straight. It is just not bending. And it could be because I have so many cracks in these boards. Just don't have an answer for this. Okay, so I investigated this further. I think the reason it's so flat up there is when I took all the clamps off, I have just tons of splitting of this topside batten, both at frame 2 and at frame 1. So I think the right thing for me to do is throw this topside batten in the garbage and start over. Now, when I say throw the whole thing in the garbage, I really only need to throw the first part of it, because as you can also see, my, what do you call that? My scarf joint failed. So I am learning as I go along here. So now I'm just gonna take these parts off, because this topside batten did not work. Okay. I'll have to see if I have that right or not, but man, that really is a bummer when those break. I put a little bit of work into this. I think what I'm going to do is just shift this whole, the 2 pieces of this topside batten. I'm going to push this down a little bit and put this scarf joint right on frame 5, and then come along and add a new batten that is split for the front of the boat. So
Unfortunately, my second attempt snapped as well.
after snapping this topside batten twice, I'm going to try a different method for this front section, instead of doing one 5/8 inch thick board, I'm going to try to make it out of a laminate of two 5/16 inch planks and see if I can get them to bend around. Using the two 5/16 inch planks to make this topside batten appears to have worked to make it around the bend. So I think I'm now ready to bond it in place.
As always, I use a combination of unthickened and thickened epoxy. Here I used a high density filler and I put in some wood powder there for coloring. Here, I mark the location of the plank laminate relative to frame number 4. Notice that I put unthickened and thickened epoxy inside of the split. I place the laminate back on the boat, ensuring to line it up to the line that I put on frame 4. I add the wooden clamps, but not so tight because I want the frames to be able to slide within. I used a lot of clamps at the front of the boat to hold together both the slit that I ripped and the two laminate boards together. It's been a challenge and not perfect, but let's take one final look at the topside batten installed. Till next time, cheers.